Hello everyone, today we'll find out if it's possible to beat the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt while using only Igni. We all know Igni, right? The fire spell that helps Geralt burn his enemies to the ground and also constantly ignite and extinguish candles while you're trying to loot stuff. Anyway, the rules of the challenge are pretty simple. Number 1 is that I'll be playing on the Death March difficulty. Number 2 is that I'm only allowed to use Igni in order to damage my opponents, however I am allowed to use my swords in order to parry enemy strikes and destroy obstacles because for some reason Igni doesn't destroy those, even though most of the time they're just wooden doors, which I'm pretty sure should start burning the moment fire touches them, but hey, what do I know? And lastly, as always, cutscenes do not count because I have no control over the Witcher in these moments and he does whatever he wants. And now that the formalities are out of the way, we can begin with the challenge. Our story begins near White Orchard, where Geralt and Vesemir are trying to find Yennefer. However, in the meantime they are attacked by a few ghouls, and I'll be honest with you, I was pretty useless during the beginning of the game because Igni is pretty useless at the start. Yeah, you can apply burning to your enemies, but you barely do any damage and the chances of actually burning them are low, so Vesemir was carrying me hard during the beginning parts. He killed pretty much all the ghouls. I probably killed like once after he did most of the damage. I then met up with Gonta Rodim, who seemed like a pretty cool guy. They definitely should explore him further. And then I cowardly ran away from the three little Temerian boys because I couldn't use Igni in the fight. I was pretty much useless. I had to use my fists and I don't wanna do that, so I ran away from them. The Novigradians promised to get me rid of them, but I had to kill the Griffin first, so Vesemir killed the Griffin basically. I was just a bystander. I did some damage, but it wasn't that much. I was so weak that my only option was to grind as much XP as I could find, and I did that by fighting with a lot of humans and getting their loot, because humans are pretty susceptible to fire no matter how weak I was. And for some reason one wolf decided to help me, and that wolf one-shot every single one of the deserters. It was absolutely incredible. When I got to level 3 and was now confident that I could survive on my own in the bigger world, I decided that it was time for me and Vesemir to leave White Orchard. So naturally we got involved in a huge bar fight where I had to just stay in the corner and burn people until they died. I then saw a pretty lady and wanted to help her out, however she was too scared of me, so she ran away and I felt heartbroken by that. So much so that I didn't even care when Yennefer showed up of all people and told me that I had to go face the Nilfgaardian Emperor because I apparently killed one of his cousins in this fight. And the Emperor was not happy. But I managed to strike a deal with him that I will find his daughter in exchange of him forgiving me for killing his cousin. He accepted my offer and I saved my skin, but now I had to find his stupid daughter. So I had to go to Velen and find a guy called Henrik. Unfortunately, it turned out that Henrik got eaten by his 3 dogs, so I had to deal with the dogs in a pretty rough way because I had to burn them down. At least Henrik had collected a lot of information on where Ciri was, and I even got a chance to hang out with my old friend Keira, who carried me throughout her quest because I was still pretty useless even though I was much stronger than before. She was on fire, absolutely annihilating the wraiths and the golem in the elf's hideout, and after that followed the most difficult part of the entire quest, which is the part where you have to protect Keira while she is closing the portals opened by the Wild Hunt. And I was terrified that if the hounds tried to kill Keira there would be nothing that I could do because I was just damaging them so slowly that they were taking a while to die, so much so that new waves of hounds were showing up when I was trying to kill the first ones. And Keira was taking forever to close the portals, as you have to kill all the hounds before she is able to close them for some reason. Thankfully though, the hounds never actually tried to kill Keira, so I had all the time in the world to kill them, and after a while I managed to do so without any issues. And after we were done, Keira had the audacity to faint in my arms as if she was the one who was fighting the hounds for like half an hour. When Keira was done overreacting, we went to fight Nidhrau, and compared to the previous fight, this was like a walk in the park because Keira did most of the work like she did with the golem. Even though he summoned a few hounds, they weren't an issue because there were no portals to close this time. Out of the kindness of my heart, I even helped Keira find the magic lamp afterwards, and I definitely didn't do it because there is a place of power in that room and all ability points I could get my hands on were absolutely precious, definitely not because of that. I then met up with the Bloody Baron, who also wanted me to find his daughter for some reason. Why does everyone lose their daughters around this place? Come on now. I even had to find the Perlax's damn goat in order to get help from him. At this point I was pretty much a whole search and rescue team, so when I saw that Crow's Perch was burning, I decided to leave the Baron to deal with that on his own and went to Croagback Bog in order to find the Ladies of the Wood. There I also had to help Johnny find his voice, and I'm pretty sure that he was trying to kill me on purpose because you cannot convince me that he lives in the swamp and constantly runs into drowners and water hags. I also had to kill a bunch of harpies and they were pretty tough to beat because they were very fast and my fire wasn't the best at that point still, so even though the fight was tough I managed to kill them all and restore Johnny's voice. This got me a date with the Ladies of the Wood and they sent me to kill the evil spirit that was haunting the village. There I also decided to see if I was powerful enough to kill the werewolf. And after a very grueling battle I managed to kill him and felt very proud of myself for doing that because the werewolf was pretty powerful. That being said, then I had to deal with the evil spirit and compared to the werewolf that was a pretty easy fight. All you have to do is just avoid the Endregas as much as you can and just damage the evil spirit. I held up my end of the bargain and the Ladies of the Wood gave me information on where the Emperor's daughter was. After that, instead of going back to the Baron, I decided to go to Novigrad and help Triss out with her troubles. There we had to kill a Drowner and a few witch hunters, and now I was feeling so much more powerful than before because in Novigrad most of the enemies you face are very weak against fire because they're either humans, vampires or drowners. And so I was finally in my element and was dealing a lot of damage. I also lied to a random guy that his house was haunted just so I can use it for myself, and then I met up with my good old friend Zoltan, who got attacked by a bunch of guys. However, because I couldn't use signs during that fight, I couldn't help him, and so I just waited upstairs until he finished with the fight. It was a pretty cowardly move, however, there was nothing I could do. When I was finished with Zoltan, I went to meet all of Dandelion's ex-girlfriends, and the quest was very fun. I met up with a bunch of new people, they were pretty cool, and everything was going according to plan. Lastly, I had to meet with Rosavar Artra, and she wanted me to be her swordplay instructor, which was pretty easy. All I had to do is just let her win the sword fight, and then talk to her. After which she wanted to fight me again. Okay, that's a bit weird. I'll let her win again, I guess. What do you mean I died? How the hell do you die from a wooden sword? I'm pretty sure I can survive being beaten up with a wooden sword. How the hell does Geralt die from that? Are you seriously telling me that I failed the challenge because freaking Rosavar Artra is beating me up with a wooden sword? I failed the challenge because of the freaking ambassador of Nilfgaard's spoiled daughter. I have to use a wooden sword in order to beat her up. I was so heartbroken that I decided to go to Dijkstra in order to order a hit on Rosavar Artra and her entire family. Unfortunately, Dijkstra wanted something in return, so I agreed to recover his treasure. So I had to kill a few drowners inside of the sewers, only to discover that the treasure was stolen by Menge, who was the commander of the temple guard. This is why I enlisted Triss to act like a bait in order to get close to Menge, and we both benefited from that because I got the treasure and Triss got to kill her arch nemesis Menge. I even got to burn down the witch hunter's barrack, and Dijkstra was so happy that I recovered his treasure that he got me a connection with his best assassin, Cyprian Wiley. I immediately went to Wiley's arena, and to show him that I was serious, I even went through all the challenges he set for me by burning down every single enemy he put up against me. Unfortunately for me, Wiley and I didn't see eye to eye and he ordered me killed. So naturally I had to get my revenge after that and go and kill him. But before that I had to go to Dijkstra and ask why did he send me to his assassin who wanted to kill me. Dijkstra was surprised by that, so he connected me with yet another person who would know where Wiley would be hiding. I finally found out where he was hiding and it was time to get my revenge. So I burned down every single one of his friends in order to ensure that nobody would interrupt us, and it was time to have a chat with Wiley. Since I was in a bad mood after the whole Rosa Varartra situation, I beat him up so badly that he even gave me some information on the Emperor's daughter, which I had no idea he had, but it was free real estate for me. Then I decided that it was time to kill Wiley, and considering that he gave me so much information, killing him brought me even more joy. Wiley told me that Cirilo was in Skellige, so considering that the Emperor would still kill me if I didn't find her, I knew that I had to go there, but first I decided to help my friend Dandelion, and in order to free him I had to kill one witch hunter with fire. After that I remembered that Tris had asked me for help, and for some reason there was one of Junior's thugs in her house, so I had to set him on fire. She didn't seem very bothered by it, she was just reading her book, as if that was the most natural thing to happen, some random thug to enter your house and to get burned down by your boyfriend or whatever the hell they are at that point. I helped Tris get the coin she needed in order to finance the mage's escape, and even burned down a few more witch hunters, and by that point I'm pretty sure I had burned down more witch hunters than they had witches, but who keeps count anyway? I was so confident that I even burned down one witch hunter in front of Tris's house, and for some reason her stupid landlords were pissed off at me for that, even though literally yesterday I killed a guy inside of their house and they seemed pretty chill about it. The mages then finally escaped Novigrad after Tris and I roasted a few drowners and a katakan, and it was finally time for me to continue my search for the Emperor's daughter by going to Skellige. There I found Yennefer and we started searching for the Emperor's daughter. Our search led us to finding out some weird mushrooms in Ermian's basement, which made me start fighting the furniture, and I'm pretty sure Ermian would have been so surprised to find his basement burned to the ground. We also had to fight with an earth elemental, and unlike with the golem, this time I was able to do a lot of damage, and Yennefer wasn't the only one who was doing stuff, unlike previously when I was held by Keira. Then Yennefer triggered a big storm and we had to fight with a few foglets. I easily roasted them because at that point my fire abilities were so overpowered. Unfortunately Ermian found us and he was very mad that I destroyed his basement. And in order to appease him I had to help him with his plot to kill all the Jarls of Skellige in order to become the Isle's one true king. I then helped Yennefer destroy Freya's garden, and then she had the brilliant idea of capturing a djinn in order to make him help us find Ciri. Everything was going according to plan until I was attacked by a bunch of drowners I couldn't fight against. Thankfully, somehow I managed to survive their assault, and after that I had to fight with the djinn. And fighting a magical being with magic wasn't my greatest idea, but I had no other, so the only effective strategy I managed to find was to hide away from him and just go out to attack him like once or twice and then go back inside in order to hide like a coward. And eventually, after a very long fight, I finally managed to defeat the djinn, only for Yennefer to fail to capture it and it running away. So all this was for nothing. Good job, Yennefer. I wanted to leave Skellige after that, however I had to help Ermian with phase 1 of his plan. He had already sent an ice giant in order to destroy Undvik and had set a Heim on Udalrik, but he wanted to finish off Udalrik's family completely, so he tasked me with killing Udalrik's baby. And the only humane way of doing that, in my opinion, was to throw the baby in the oven and just watch Udalrik suffer as the Heim finished him off. With that, since I had no other leads on the Emperor's daughter, I decided to go back to Velen and see how the Baron was doing. Wait, this place is still on fire. I was gone for like a month. How is it still on fire? You would think that it would have burned down by this point? What is this place? Why is it resistant to me? Why is the Baron beating up some random guy? What the hell is going on here? After that you have to leave the Baron to beat you up, but considering that the challenge was already failed, I couldn't just have the Baron beat me up like that, so I absolutely annihilated him. That evening we had to deal with the botchling, and while I really wanted to lift the curse, I couldn't calm it down using Axie, so the botchling got angry and I had to kill it. Needless to say, the Baron wasn't very happy with me because of that. I mean, I did kill his child, but I knew there was one way to salvage our relationship.
Ever play Gwent?
I do. And what's more, I usually win.
So after my proposition, I absolutely annihilated the Baron at Gwent as well, and our relationship was fixed. Finally, I had to complete the palace ritual, and it was very easy considering all you have to do is keep the blazers lit. After that I talked with some peasant and found out where the Baron's wife was, and he gave me all the information about Ciri he had, and even gave me Uma in order to lift the curse that was holding him. In order to lift the curse I gathered all the witchers who owed me money, as well as Yennefer because she was forever in my debt after the whole Jin fiasco, and after me and Esco killed the folktale by burning it down, we managed to lift the curse off of Avalach, an elven sage, who traveled with Ciri and told us where to find her. I knew that the wild hunt would come as soon as I found Ciri, so I gathered a few allies. Then I was summoned by Ermion because he wanted to activate phase 2 of his plan to destroy the Jarls. His plan was to attack with berserkers during the coronation ceremony. Unfortunately, only the children of the Jarls died, aside from Hjalmar and Ceres. To my surprise, Ceres revealed that she was actually working with Ermion in exchange of keeping her alive, and so with that ally by my side, we needed a target who we could use in order to frame Burna Bran for all the murders. So we picked out Arnvald, and I decided to wait for him and attack him with some fire. He was absolutely annihilated and he agreed to help us, and so Burna Bran was sentenced to death and her son was exiled. With that heroic performance, Ceres was appointed the new queen of Skellige. However, I knew that Ermion was ruling in the shadows, and I honestly hoped that now that he was pretty much the king, he would stop with his nefarious plans, so I would be able to go and find Ciri on the Isle of Mists. Unfortunately, then I ran into a few stupid dwarves who wanted me to find their friends. After I did that, they finally let me inside. I had to kill a bunch of harpies in order to get there. However, I had finally found Ciri and she was safe and sound, and I could give her to the Emperor in exchange for my life. Unfortunately, as I was about to go to Vizima, the Wild Hunt showed up, so I knew that I couldn't give Ciri just yet. I had to protect her because Emir would have no chance against the hunt alone. That's why I gathered all of my allies and it was time to fight with the Wild Hunt. And during the Battle of Kaer Morhen we failed the challenge 5 more times because you have to use dimeritium bombs in order to close the portals from which the Wild Hunt soldiers and hounds are coming out of. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, the Wild Hunt defeated us. They were about to kidnap Ciri when Vesemir, the last man standing, tried to fight them all alone, even though he would have probably won if he was fighting fair one-on-one fights. He didn't have that luxury, and so he decided to sacrifice himself in order to give Ciri a chance to escape. Vesemir was killed and Ciri lost control of her powers, which was a good thing because she drove the Wild Hunt away. I woke up to see that Vesemir was killed. I couldn't believe it. He was the man who trained me to fight only using fire. I was absolutely heartbroken. I couldn't care anymore about kings, emperors, anything like that. All I wanted was revenge, and I was gonna get it one way or another. So I got Ciri, I forgot about my agreement with the emperor, and we went to Bold Mountain in order to kill Imlerith. And he was probably the toughest enemy I had faced so far because his armor was very strong against my fire, his shield was blocking almost all of my hits. However, if I managed to sneak behind him, I was managing to hit him and slowly but surely destroy his health bar. In the end, when he teleports all over the place, all you have to do is wait for him to slam his weapon into the ground and then you can burn him down for a bit of damage. After that, you can finally defeat Imlerith and avenge your master. We were in the end game now, and in order to defeat the Wild Hunt, we had to recruit the Lodge of Sorceresses. First on the list was Philippa Eilhart. She was pretty easy to find, however, she had a boss with her, and this was probably the worst enemy I could have ever faced in this challenge because it was a fire elemental. Meaning that my Igni attack did nothing to it, aside from maybe charging it and making it even stronger. That being said, despite those being heavily stacked against you, there is still a way to kill the fire elemental without using anything but Igni. And that's to hope that Philippa would be hitting her own sentry in order to damage it. Because otherwise you have no way of damaging the sentry, and it would eventually just kill you because every step it takes pretty much takes damage from you because of the fire. But if you get lucky enough, Philippa would eventually damage her sentry enough in order to kill it, and you will be able to pass that mission, and then you pin Philippa down for subjecting you to this terrible boss fight. I then hanged out with Avalak for a while, and I would never repeat that because in the 20 minutes we hung out, I nearly suffocated, fought some overgrown insects, nearly drowned and nearly froze to death. I then spent some quality time with Ciri, which naturally I used in order to hit on her friend, and it was time for the final part of our preparations before going to Skellige, and that was to sneak Margaret out of the prison. In order to get to the prison I had to kill a few drowners, but at this point my Igni was so strong that basic enemies were no match for me and they couldn't stop me. And speaking of basic enemies, I then had my fun with the witch hunters and burned a bunch of them again. We then rescued Margarita and I had to go out of the prison. Back in Skellige, I threatened the Emperor that if he wanted to see his daughter again, he would kill Rosa Varartra and her entire family for making me use the wooden sword and failing the challenge. He refused, so naturally I told him that he would never see Ciri again. In order to draw the Wild Hunt for the final battle, we needed the Sunstone. However, Ermion didn't want to give it to me unless I helped him to kill Madman Lugos. So reluctantly I burned Madman Lugos and his entire castle to the ground. I kinda liked him, but hey, Ermion has his plans for the island, so there was nothing I can do to stop him. Acquiring the Sunstone was barely an inconvenience because I had Philippa with me, and after we destroyed Avalak's laboratory, Ciri and I were finally ready for the final battle. In the final battle, Geralt first fights with Carantir, and he is injured since he already fought with Ciri. And the easiest way to attack him and damage him only using Igni is when he's summoning an ice elemental, because he stands in one place and doesn't do much, and after a while he pretty much gave up and just accepted his destiny and just allowed me to burn him until he was dead. Aside from like one random attack that was like a last ditch effort to kill me, however he failed and I defeated him. With Carantir defeated, only Eredin was remaining. That being said, Kaer had gotten there before me, and Eredin absolutely destroyed him, which I guess Ermion was happy about because that way he would only have 2 more Yarrows to deal with before he can assume absolute control over Skellige. Eredin was almost an extremely difficult boss because even though he doesn't inflict a lot of damage, he makes multiple fast attacks which can pile up over time if they hit you. The crucial part is that he also has a shield that he constantly activates in order to block your magic, and that shield was very annoying because He was constantly activating it even if he was mid-swing, and Igni didn't do much damage to him, because even if you managed to get him in a moment where he didn't have his shield activated, you would only do a very small amount of damage to him. And the reason he was almost a very difficult boss is that for some reason, even though I tried the battle twice, both times he glitched out and stopped fighting me. I don't know why, but I guess he just wanted me to win the fight, so after a while of burning him, even when he wasn't protecting himself, he was tanking a lot of my fire without any issues whatsoever. Hilariously, when he got himself unstuck, he threw me into a whole another battle arena just so he can run away from it and go back to the ship where we had our final encounter, and I finally defeated Eredin and fully avenged my master Vesemir. And so the game was pretty much complete. All you had to do now is go find Ciri and have her go and fight the White Frost. After that I decided to make her into a witcher so that she can go and kill Rosa Varartra on my behalf for making me fail the challenge. And with that, the challenge is complete. In the end, we weren't able to complete the Witcher 3 only by using Igni. You had to use the wooden sword while sparring with Rosa Varartra, and you had to use the Dimeritium bombs during the Battle of Kaer Morhen. That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any challenge ideas, feel free to write them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!